Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Rain fell relentlessly on New York, forming liquid mirrors on the asphalt. The streetlights trembled in the gusts, and the few passers-by huddled under their umbrellas. In his black electric car, 28-year-old Ethan Cole drove silently. His Swiss watch shone in the dashboard light. He had just left a social event at a Manhattan hotel, one of those receptions where smiles are polite, laughter forced, and conversations filled with numbers. Ethan had everything to be happy: wealth, beauty, reputation, but a strange melancholy dwelt in his eyes. For weeks, he had been sleeping poorly. Recurring nightmares, a crying child, arms closing around him, a white light, and then emptiness. Always the same dream, always the same feeling of having lost something, or someone. He took a shortcut through the Brooklyn Heights neighborhood, where the streets become darker and the sidewalks cracked. That's where he saw him. Under a broken bus shelter, a man huddled, soaked to the bone, clutching an old gray blanket to himself. Ethan was about to continue on his way, like so many other motorists before him, when a detail made him brake suddenly. His heart skipped a beat. The man slowly raised his head. And what Ethan saw rooted him to the spot. It was him. Or rather, a gaunt, tired, damaged version of himself. Same face. Same green eyes. Same scar on her lip, inherited from a childhood accident. A disturbing image, as if fate had just materialized a mirror in the street. He remained frozen for a few seconds, unable to breathe. Then, without thinking, he got out of the car. Rain streamed down his cashmere jacket as he slowly approached the man. "Hey, how are you?" he asked in an uncertain voice. The homeless man jumped, his gaze wary. His hands were trembling. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse, but strangely familiar. "Why are you looking at me like that?" "Because," Ethan hesitated, unable to formulate his sentence, "you have my face." A heavy silence fell between them, broken only by the sound of rain on metal. The man narrowed his eyes, observing Ethan from head to toe. Then a painful grimace stretched his lips. "So you're the ghost I see in the shop windows," he said, "the guy who took the life that could have been mine." Ethan felt a shiver run through him. "What's your name?" "Liam." The name echoed strangely in his head, like a forgotten echo. Liam looked away, ashamed. "Don't get too close. I stink of street smell and I don't want your nice coat to smell of poverty." Ethan remained silent for a moment, staring at him. Something deep inside him told him he couldn't leave. Not this time. He took off his jacket and gently placed it on the homeless man's shoulders. "Come with me," he said calmly, "just for tonight. You can wash, eat, and rest a little." Liam looked up, suspicious. "And why would I trust a stranger?" "Because," Ethan replied in a whisper, "we may not be strangers." In the pouring rain, the two men stood face to face for a moment, two opposing lives, one same face, a mystery suspended between past and destiny. Ethan didn't know it yet, but this night would change his life forever, revealing a secret buried for 28 years. And to change the meaning of the word brother forever. Ethan drove slowly through the rain-soaked streets, casting brief glances at Liam in the passenger seat. The man stared silently at the road, his fingers gripping the blanket he refused to let go of. His soaked hair clung to his forehead, and despite the car's gentle warmth, he was still trembling. Ethan wanted to talk, to ask hundreds of questions, but he held back. The silence seemed fragile, like a pane of glass ready to shatter at the slightest word. "Have you lived here for a long time?" he asked finally, his voice soft. Liam shrugged. "Here, there, elsewhere, the bridges, the shelters. You get used to it. When you have nothing, you end up belonging to the street." "And your family?" Liam turned his head towards him, a bitter smile on his lips. "The street is my family." Ethan felt a strange pain in his chest. This face, identical to his own, reflected a version of himself he had never known, that of a broken man, but dignified despite his misery. A few minutes later, they passed through the gates of the Cole residence. The manor house stood imposingly on a hill, with its large, lighted windows and carefully tended gardens. Liam stood frozen in front of the door, his eyes wide. Is this your place?" "Yes." Liam let out a small, incredulous laugh. "It looks like a museum. Aren't you afraid I'll dirty your marble?" Ethan gave a slight smile. "If you do it, at least he'll finally have a story." Inside, the butler Harris, an elderly man with a stern face, immediately rushed over. "Mr. Cole, is everything all right?" Then, upon seeing Liam, he froze, speechless. The two men looked so alike that the old man initially thought he was hallucinating. "My God," he stammered. Ethan made a discreet gesture. "Harris, prepare a guest room. Hot water, clothes, and something to eat." "Okay, sir, but who is a guest?" Ethan replied simply. Liam watched everything, uneasy, like an intruder in a dream that was too good to be true. The walls adorned with paintings, the sparkling chandeliers, the smell of warm bread. Everything seemed unreal to him. "Do you really need all that to feel alive?" he suddenly blurted out, almost defiantly. Ethan remains calm. "No. But sometimes it's easier to hide behind walls than to look at what we've lost." Silence fell again. Harris returned a few moments later with a tray, hot soup, fresh bread, and a folded napkin. Liam hesitated to touch anything, then finally brought the spoon to his lips. His eyes filled with tears. "I can't even remember the last time I ate something hot," he murmured. Ethan looked at him, moved. It wasn't pity he felt, but a strange sense of reunion. Something deep inside him whispered that this man had not appeared in his life by chance. After the meal, Liam took a long shower. The water ran blackish onto the tiles. When he came out, clean-shaven, dressed in a simple t-shirt and clean pants, Ethan was speechless. It was like looking at yourself in a living mirror. "Good blood," he breathed. Liam raised an eyebrow. "Are you only realizing now that we're identical?" "Yes, but not just the face. Even the scar." Liam touched his lower lip in surprise. "I've had it since I was a kid. I don't even know how I got it." Ethan turned pale. "Me neither." The two men stared at each other in silence, troubled by this all-too-perfect coincidence. Then Liam looked away. "Listen, I don't want to stay here long." "Thank you, but I don't belong in your world." Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to leave. Not tonight. Stay at least until tomorrow." Liam hesitated, then slowly nodded. "Okay. One night. But tomorrow morning, I'll disappear." "All right," Ethan replied calmly. "We'll talk tomorrow. I promise." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He remained in his office, his eyes lost in the flame of the fireplace, haunted by the resemblance. In the silence of the manor, one word kept echoing in his mind: brother. And as he stared at the photos from his childhood, he realized that he never remembered being alone in the earliest pictures. As if someone had been erased. Someone, who might have just knocked on his door. Morning dawned over a manor house still enveloped in silence. Sunlight filtered through the large bay windows, making the light dance on the polished furniture. Ethan, already awake, stared at the steaming cup of coffee in front of him, lost in thought. The previous day's encounter kept replaying in her mind. Liam's face haunted her thoughts, like an unsolved enigma. Footsteps could be heard in the corridor. Liam appeared, hesitant, wearing the simple clothes Harris had prepared, jeans, a white shirt slightly too big. He seemed different, almost at peace, but his eyes retained that glint of mistrust that one does not lose after years on the street. "You didn't sleep?" he asked, seeing Ethan. "Not really," he replied with a tired smile. "And you?" "That's great. I think I'd forgotten what it was like to sleep in a real bed." They sat down opposite each other. Harris served breakfast and slipped away discreetly. A few minutes passed without a word, punctuated only by the clinking of cutlery. Then Ethan launched into it, unable to contain his curiosity any longer. "Liam, tell me your story." Liam stopped, the fork suspended in the air. He sighed, then looked out the window. "My story? It begins where others end. In a hospital, I suppose. I was abandoned as a baby. Never knew my parents. I grew up in foster homes, with faces that changed all the time and promises that were quickly forgotten. At 16, I ran away. Since then, it's been the streets, shelters, construction sites, one day here, one day there." Ethan listened to him, his fists clenched under the table. Every word from Liam sounded like a slap in the face. "And nobody ever tried to find you?" Liam shook his head. "No. Nobody looks for what they have decided to forget." A phrase heavy with meaning. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine. Something in this story resonated strangely with his own past. He had never known his biological father, nor his adoptive mother. Catherine Cole always avoided questions about his birth. All he knew was that he had been adopted at the age of 1, under special circumstances. Ethan hesitated, then asked softly, "Have you never tried to find any traces?" "I searched. But the adoption files, the names, everything had disappeared. As if someone had wanted me to remain invisible." Ethan's heart sank. "Invisible," he repeated. "You know, it's funny. We live in two different worlds, and yet I feel the same." "Oh yes," said Liam with a slight laugh, "you, the guy from the magazines?" "You're mistaken," Ethan replied, lowering his voice. "You think I have everything, but I have no one. The people around me love me for what I represent, not for who I am. Deep down, we might be closer than you think." Liam looked at him for a long time. What he read in Ethan's eyes, a raw, almost painful sincerity, unsettled him. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. So maybe chance doesn't exist. Later that day, Ethan went up to the attic of the manor. Beneath the dust and old trunks, he searched for childhood mementos. Photo albums, notebooks, anything that could remind him of his early years. He opened one, covered in worn leather. The first pages showed a green-eyed baby, smiling in the arms of a young woman. But the more pages he turned, the more a strange detail appeared. In some photos, a small child's arm appeared next to the image, as if cut out of the frame. Another child. Deleted. His heart began to beat faster. He picked up his phone and immediately called Catherine, his adoptive mother. "Mom? I need to talk to you. It's urgent." "Ethan, what's going on? You seem upset. Tell me the truth. Did I have a brother?" An icy silence answered from the other side of the line. Ethan closed his eyes. "Please, Mom. Tell me." Catherine's voice trembled. "Ethan. This wasn't supposed to come out. Yes, you had a brother. A twin. But the hospital made a mistake the day you were born. They said that the other baby had died." "Dead?" "That's what I was told. Your biological father disappeared, and I did everything I could to give you a stable life. You understand, I wanted to protect you." Ethan felt his legs give way. The world around him shifted. Everything fit together, the nightmares, the holes in the photos, the resemblance. Liam was no accident. He was the lost brother. That evening, he found Liam in the living room, sitting by the fireplace, gazing at the flames. Ethan approached slowly. "I have something to tell you." Liam looked up, intrigued. "I just got off the phone with my mother. She confessed everything to me." "Confess what?" Ethan took a deep breath. "You are not just my reflection, Liam. You are my twin brother." A thunderous silence fell over the room. Liam stepped back, his eyes wide. "What are you talking about?" "That's true. You were taken away by mistake at birth. They told my mother you were dead. Liam burst out laughing, a nervous, almost hysterical laugh. No, no, that's impossible. If it were true, then someone stole my life. Yes, said Ethan, his voice breaking, and I want to help you get it back. The two men stared at each other, shaken. United by blood, separated by lies. And for the first time, Ethan understood that the most precious wealth he had ever possessed had just sat down before him, with trembling hands and tearful eyes. The next morning, light filtered gently through the curtains. But in Cole Manor, the atmosphere remained heavy, almost suffocating. Ethan had barely slept. His thoughts collided, filled with blurry images, unanswered questions, and this insane truth: he had a brother. A twin. And this brother had grown up in poverty, while he himself lived in abundance. He went down to the ground floor. Liam was already waiting for him in the living room, arms crossed, face closed off. The fireplace fire had long since gone out, leaving behind a smell of cold ash. So, Liam launched into it, without hesitation. Are you going to tell me again that I'm your brother? Ethan nodded. I know it's hard to believe. But I need to get to the bottom of this. I want a DNA test. Liam burst into bitter laughter. A DNA test? What for? To make you feel better? To ease your millionaire conscience? Non, Ethan replied softly. So that we can know the truth, together. Liam stared at him for a long time, then looked away. You want to know the truth? Me too. But if you want us to do this test, then you're the one who pays. Of course, yours, Ethan. It's not about money. A few days later. They went together to a private laboratory in Manhattan. Liam observed the white walls, the blouses, the cold lights with obvious mistrust. Ethan, for his part, remained silent, his jaw clenched. The doctor took a saliva sample from each of them, thanked them politely, and explained that the results would be available in 3 days. 3 days. 3 days spent waiting for a truth that could change everything. Meanwhile, Ethan tried to bring Liam closer to his life. He showed her his company, his offices, his humanitarian projects. But Liam still seemed distant, as if he refused to be contaminated by this world of glass and steel. One evening, in the vast, brightly lit living room, Liam observed a child's portrait hanging on the wall. Is that you? He asked. Yes. A photo that my mother likes very much. Liam approached, squinting. Look closely. Ethan approached in turn, and his heart sank. Behind him, in a blurry corner of the frame, a child's silhouette appeared, almost erased. Liam murmurs. You see? Even then, I was already half erased from your life. Ethan remains silent. He then understood that, regardless of the test result, Liam carried a pain that nothing could erase. 3 days later. An official letter arrived from the laboratory. Ethan opened it with trembling hands. Liam, standing next to him, stared nervously at the letter. A few seconds of silence. Then Ethan looked up, his voice breaking. 99.99%. Liam, we're twin brothers. Liam stepped back, breathless. He placed a hand on the table, unsteady. No, no, it's not possible. Ethan approached, tears in his eyes. I swear, it's true. They stole your life, your name, your right to exist. And I promise you I'll never leave you alone again. But Liam shook his head in rage. Do you think a piece of paper is going to fix 28 years of hardship? He shouted. Do you think a test erases the cold, the hunger, the nights spent on the sidewalk? Non, replied Ethan, his voice trembling, but it could be a start. Liam stared at him, his eyes filled with tears and rage. A beginning? What do you want me to be? Your guilt trophy? Look, I found my lost brother, I'm a hero. Liam, stop, Ethan shouted in turn, this is not charity, it's bloodshed. Silence fell abruptly. Liam remained motionless, his fists clenched, then looked away. I don't want your pity. This is not pity. So what is it, Ethan? Ethan searched for his words, his throat tight. It is, the need to repair what the world has destroyed. Liam stared at him, then turned on his heel. I'm not for sale, brother. And he left the mansion, leaving Ethan alone in the silence, clutching the test paper in his trembling hands. That night, Ethan went up onto the terrace, facing the illuminated city. The cold wind whipped against his face. He looked at the skyscrapers, the streets below, and thought of Liam somewhere outside, without a roof, without landmarks. He picked up his phone and called his lawyer. James? It's Ethan. I need you to find all the adoption documents from June 12, 1997, at St. Mary's Hospital. And search the internal archives as well. Someone lied, and I want to know who. He hung up, his eyes full of determination. The mystery was not solved. It was no longer just a matter of blood. It was a quest for truth, and he was prepared to do anything to find it. Night had fallen on the Davenport family manor. Rain pattered against the large windows with an almost hypnotic regularity. Liam, lying in the guest room, couldn't sleep. All around him exuded luxury and order, mahogany furniture, silk sheets, antique portraits, but none of it brought him rest. On the bedside table, he noticed a gilded frame, turned upside down against the wood. Overcome by silent curiosity, he turned it right side up. The photograph showed a smiling couple holding two identical babies in their arms. Liam's breath caught in his throat. Two infants, the same face, the same eyes, the same dimple on their left cheek. At the bottom of the photo, an almost erased inscription. Ethan and Liam, 2002. He felt the ground give way beneath his feet. His hands were trembling. No, that's not possible, he murmured. At the same moment, the door slowly opened. Ethan, dressed in a bathrobe, looked at him gravely. I knew you'd find it eventually, he said calmly. Liam raised his head, his heart pounding. You knew? Since when? Ever since I saw you in the street. Ever since I saw your face. Ethan entered the room, sat down opposite him, and continued. My mother often spoke to me about a twin brother. But I was told he died at birth. My father, however, refused to talk about it. When I saw you, I knew it was all a lie. Liam lowered his eyes, unable to hold back the tears that were rising. So, you mean that I'm your brother? Ethan nodded slowly. Yes. My brother. Silence settled in, heavy, broken only by the sound of rain. Our lives have taken opposite paths, Liam murmured. You've had everything, and I've had nothing. Ethan stood up and placed a hand on his shoulder. It's not a question of possessions. It's a question of truth. And I intend to find out what it is. My father owes me some answers. That night, the two brothers stayed awake until dawn, sharing hazy memories, buried emotions, and the same pain, that of having been separated for no reason. But what they didn't yet know was that their father, Jonathan Davenport, was listening to everything behind the door, and that the secret he had hidden for 23 years was about to explode. Dawn broke slowly over the Davenport estate. The manor was bathed in golden light, contrasting with the tension that still hung in the air. In the grand living room, Ethan and Liam waited, seated facing each other, their gaze fixed on the front door. A few minutes later, Jonathan Davenport appeared. His step was slow and heavy, like that of a man walking towards his own judgment. His graying hair framed a tired face, and yet his gaze, an icy blue, betrayed the firmness of a man accustomed to dominating. I suppose you found the photo, he said bluntly, in a hoarse voice. Liam stands up abruptly. So it's true. You knew I existed, didn't you? You knew I was your son. Jonathan sighed, sat down in the leather armchair facing them, and placed his clasped hands on his knees. Yes, Liam. I knew it. From day one. Ethan frowned. Why? Why did you separate us? Why did you take away everything he should have had? A thick silence fell. Jonathan closed his eyes for a few seconds before speaking. When you were born, your mother was very ill. The doctors said she wouldn't survive 2 births. She wanted to keep you both, but my parents had already decided. They thought 1 heir was enough. They arranged the adoption in secret while your mother was unconscious. He paused, his voice trembling. She died without ever knowing that her son had been stolen from her. Liam felt anger rising within him, burning, uncontrollable. So, all this time I was alive, lost in the street, while you were living your wonderful life here? Jonathan lowered his head in shame. I found out years later. I wanted to find you, but everything had been erased. The papers, the files. My parents destroyed everything before they died. Ethan stood up abruptly. And you thought that silence would erase everything? That money could buy the past? Jonathan stood up in turn, his voice breaking. No, Ethan. I've lived with this burden every day. And fate has just punished me through you. Liam took a few steps towards the large window and looked out at the vast garden, tears in his eyes. It's not fate. It's the truth, finally revealed. And now, I want to know one thing. He turned around, his gaze hard. Why me? Why did they choose to abandon me? Jonathan remained silent for a few seconds before whispering. Because you were the weakest at birth. And they believed you wouldn't survive. A chilling shiver ran through the room. Ethan placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. So they were wrong. Because you are here, alive. And you are my brother, no matter what. Jonathan, distraught, slowly approached Liam. Let me fix what I can still. Come back here. Let me give you the life you deserve. But Liam shook his head. No. What I want is not your wealth. It's your honesty. And I'm not sure you still know how to give that. Jonathan, his eyes misting over, understood that his forgiveness would not come so easily. Ethan spoke in a soft voice. Perhaps we cannot erase the past. But we can decide what our future will be. Together. The father looked up at his 2 sons, one born into luxury, the other forged in the streets, and for the first time in 23 years, he saw not 2 broken lives, but 2 fragments of the same truth finally reunited. 3 months had passed since the night the truth came out in the Davenport mansion. The newspapers had discovered the story of the twins separated at birth, the heir and the forgotten son, and the whole town was talking about nothing else. But far from the media frenzy, a quiet decision was being prepared. That morning, the autumn sun flooded the gardens of the estate. Liam, dressed simply in a white shirt and dark trousers, stood in front of the large fountain, where he had long observed his reflection without recognizing himself. Ethan arrived, 2 cups of coffee in hand. You're leaving today, aren't you? Liam nodded. Yes. I found a small apartment in the neighborhood where I grew up. It's not big, but it's home. Ethan remained silent for a moment, then asked. And father? Liam smiled sadly. He offered me everything a man could want, a car, a fortune, a position in the company. But there is one thing he cannot offer me, the time that was stolen from me. He looked up at the sky. I realized that I can't erase what I've been through. And I don't want to. Those years on the streets taught me the value of things that money can't touch. Ethan placed a hand on his shoulder. You are stronger than I will ever be. Liam gave a slight smile. No, brother. We are strong together. That's something they can never take away from us. In the distance, Jonathan's silhouette appeared on the doorstep. He looked at his sons, his heart heavy, knowing that no inheritance, no forgiveness, could ever fully heal the wounds of the past. But deep down, he felt a new peace, the peace of knowing that truth, at last, once again resided within his own roof. Liam took a few steps towards him, stopping at a respectful distance. I forgive you, he said softly. Not to erase the past, but to move forward. Jonathan, his eyes moist, bowed slightly. Thank you, son. Liam then turned on his heel, passing through the gates of the manor without looking back. The wind made the leaves fly around him, like a sign of renewal. Ethan watched him walk away, then whispered. He has left, but this time, he is not leaving alone. And in the reflection of the fountain, two identical faces seemed to be looking at each other again, as if to seal forever the rediscovered union of two souls that life had wanted to separate.